I'm your host, Jesus Ramirez. How are you guys doing today? In today's stream, we have a daily creative challenge recap where I will talk about the project we've worked on this week and also answer any questions you may have. We'll also take a look at Discord and see some of the work that you've created throughout the week. Feel free to ask me any questions that you want in the chat, and we'll also look at another hands-on tutorial where you will learn how to turn summer into winter in Photoshop. So it's going to be a quick one, but I do want to answer your questions. So let me look at the chat and see if there are any questions or anything that you guys want to know from me. By the way, I'm streaming from the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area in San Ramon, California. Let me know where you're watching from. As always, a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, only 1 week. I'm only here 1 week this week, so I will not be here next week. Good to see you, Sam. How's it going? Steve, Frank, Clarissa. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. If this is your first time watching or you're watching from YouTube, make sure that you head over into behance.net /live so that you can comment and I can see the comments. I won't be able to see the comments in YouTube. But yeah, summer into winter, but we need more animal pictures. Maybe we can throw in an animal in that summer into winter photo. All right, I'm going to switch over into my screen. And the first thing that I want to show you is the behance.net /challenge/Photoshop page. And this is the page where you can see all the projects that we worked on this week. We started on July 25th with the dual lighting effect, and we completed the challenges yesterday with increasing contrast in Photoshop on July 28th. You can, of course, watch the recordings and click on the Get Started buttons to get started. Before we talk a little bit more about the individual challenges, I do want to show you that you can get into the Discord community chat page by clicking on this link, which will get you into Discord, and you can see the projects that we've been working on. We started on Monday with the dual lighting effect, and we continued on to work on adding light rays and creating perspective distortions. And this is Paul. I don't think this is from our challenge, but I think someone was a little late, but good to see Paul on Discord. And yeah, we did oh, cool. Somebody posted, Ted, thank you so much, posted the longer version of the perspective distortion effect. I did this one with Anna McNaught, my good friend Anna, and you can see some of the results here from the perspective bending effect on the daily creative challenge. The point is that you can come in here and submit your work, and you can ask questions, get help, and just have some fun chatting with the rest of the community. Again, this is a recap stream, so I'll be taking a look at the chat and seeing if there's any questions. Will I be on Max Online? Okay, so I will be speaking at Adobe Max. I'm assuming my in-person sessions will also be streamed, but I don't want to promise that because I'm not sure. So if the in-person streams, in-person sessions are streamed, then I will be on Max Online. Cool. Awesome. Susan from Pleasanton, California. Awesome. I can just probably walk right over to your place. I live just down the street. Key West, Florida. Good to see you in the house. Thank you so much, Clarissa, for making that comment. Amazing past 2 weeks. Awesome. Philip says you look great. Hard to believe you have health problems. Yeah, I'm surprised myself. I think I even surprised my doctors because the prognosis wasn't a good one. But I feel normal. I feel fine. I'm playing soccer again. I'm doing everything normal. It just doesn't feel like something so bad happened to me. Cool. So a lot of all of the challenges that we worked on this week were from the Discover Panel's hands-on tutorials. If this is the first time you're joining or you forgot, you can click on this icon here to open up the Discover panel, this magnifying glass icon, and you can go down into the hands-on tutorials section. And from here, you have dozens and dozens of tutorials that you can follow along. Most of my tutorials appear on the add photo effects section. All these are mine except for the last two. And the ones that we worked on this week were these tutorials that you see here. We actually didn't look into the day into night tutorial, and we didn't look at the change summer to winter tutorial. So that's the one that we're gonna work with today. This is not really part of the challenge, but I figured that I will show you guys some tips and tricks since we're here already. So I'm just gonna save this file so that I could, oops, I need to open that file. When you close it, you can save it, but then you need to open it again. Like I said, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, but this is a very simple effect that you can create in Photoshop. If you have an image like this where you have a lot of greenery in the background, you can easily turn that green into white, giving it the look and feel of snow. And you can do so by going into the hue and saturation adjustment layer. An adjustment layer is simply a layer that allows you to work with an image's tonality, brightness, or color non-destructively. In other words, you can come back and make changes if you want. And what that allows you to do is make a change. And if you're unhappy with it, just delete it. That's what non-destructive means. Or it means that if you make a change, you can come back and do a different type of change if you want. So you're not stuck with the changes that you make. Cool. Ted remembers when I did a summer to winter stream. It was one of your favorite streams of all time. You're not going to believe this, Ted, but I don't remember making that stream. To be fair, I had a brain injury and 5 or 10% of my cerebellum is gone, but that doesn't mean I should have forgotten about that stream, but I don't remember making that stream. The point is that when you have a hue and saturation adjustment layer, you can click on this icon here to select the color that you see on your canvas. So I can click on this green, but in reality it's in the yellows, even though we're talking about greenery, trees, and grass and all that, is really in the yellows. And you can, make it greener if you like, or you can make it seem like a fall type of effect, and you can use these controls here to adjust the pixels that are affected. The color that you select, come back here to 0, will be right in the center and between these 2 points, right here, right in the center. And we can make adjustments to those colors by using this slider. So what happens here? When we drag the slider over to the left, you'll notice that the yellows will now turn to the color that's below, in this case, magenta. Then between this point and this point, we'll have a gradual transition between magenta and the original color. This is why the gradient looks the same after that point, and it looks the same after this point over to the right. The transition happens between the vertical line and this little triangle icon here. So that's why this is a very good representation of what's going on in these gradients. So in this case, I don't really want to adjust the hue. I can adjust the saturation, bring that down, and also adjust the lightness if need be. And that helps create the illusion of snow. If you wanted to create a stronger effect, you can certainly do so by clicking and dragging up on this line. Also, we talked about this icon yesterday in the contrast tutorial. I can maybe select this point and keep it where it is, and then just make everything brighter here. And actually, I'm not really liking that. So what I'll do is I'll just come and drag up here and maybe drag these down. The point is that you can create that illusion that now we have snow in the image rather than it being green. And what I can do now is also go into the blues here, excuse me, blues here, and then just make, I'm going to drag this up actually, and then just make blues darker and more saturated, something like that, even though the sky probably wouldn't look like that if it were snowing. Cool. Sean is saying that Robert is an Adobe Live historian. Ted just made the stream up in his mind, never happened, unless Robert says it did. That's pretty funny. But yeah, so this is one way in which you can create that effect. And also, since this is, again, feel free to ask questions in the chat so that I can answer them, especially if they're related to the stream. So I'm going to show you something that I wasn't even thinking about showing, but it's a cool trick that I think a lot of people don't know. I just got to find the right photo for it with a hue and saturation slider. If you follow me on YouTube, you probably have seen this before because I made a video on it not too long ago. And that is how to, we'll use this image here. That is how to change the color on an object, like in this woman's dress, we can select the hue and saturation adjustment layer, and we can use that same technique. We can click on this icon here and select, this purple here on her dress, and we can make an adjustment. So actually, let me click on this point here. You can see that when I drag, I adjust the saturation. I don't want to necessarily adjust the sky, so I need to be very careful when I click on a color. So I can click on that color there, and that selects mainly the purples, which is what I want. And just so that I can see what's going on, I'm going to just desaturate the dress, and I'm going to use these sliders to control the colors that I'm going to select, like so. So I don't want to affect the sky, I just want to affect the dress, and I think that looks pretty good. I think I have most of the dress selected, which is what I want, and that looks great. Now, what you need to do if you want to make the background black and white but keep the dress in color is actually flip these values. So 241 and 249, somebody in the chat type in those numbers for me because I will forget, and then it doesn't matter, 340 and 550. Basically what that means is that I can click and drag this point over to that side. See how it just came back around this side, and I can just flip these values right here. Oops, I forgot this one. Let me bring this one back. And I need to put that right about there, and then move this one. And you got to click in the center, like right in the center, so you can move both. I was accidentally moving them one at a time. But the point is, now I can flip these guys over as well. And now if I keep the values inverted, where I was just affecting the purples and not the other. Oops, I actually brought it completely back. Sorry about that. I need to go the other way. Let me reset that and do that again, because I completely didn't do that right. Sorry, guys. So once you select the color like that, you can desaturate the layer and just do something like this, where you're only affecting that color. Then you can flip these guys around like so, where now the only colors that you're affecting are the background. So the inversion, if I wanted to be precise, what I would have done is made sure that the values that were on this side will appear on the other side right here. So again, I don't have to be super precise. It doesn't really matter. I can, just adjust these accordingly. But the point is that you can flip the sliders around so that you're, instead of targeting the colors that you selected, now you're targeting the opposite colors, if that makes any sense. I know it can be a little confusing, but it gave us the opposite result, where we're now targeting the opposite colors that we selected. This is why the background now looks black and white rather than her dress. Again, to be clear, with the hue and saturation adjustment layer, you can click on a color and select it, and that selects a range of colors. These colors here are the colors that I want because that's the color of her dress. See, when I desaturate the layer, that's what becomes desaturated, right? And what I did was simply put these sliders in this location and these sliders in this location. And the way that you would do that is by simply dragging from the centers. You can drag both so they come to the other side. And now I can just switch their positions, where the pixels that are targeted are now all the pixels outside of the colors of the dress, if that makes sense. All right, so I know that could be a little confusing, especially because I made a mistake on the first try. But I wanted to show you that random tip that I thought about when we were working on this image. Cool. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. No, it looks like we're just still talking about Robert being the Adobe Live historian. Thank you so much, Sean, for letting me know that it makes sense, and for also writing down the values that at the end didn't really matter. Oh God, July of 2020. Awesome, changing seasons. Yeah, so I think that was before actually, yeah, that was before this video made it onto, or the tutorial made it onto the Discover panel. So another of the tutorials that we didn't talk about this week in the Discover panel, some of the tutorials that I made was making the daylight or daytime into nighttime in Photoshop. And basically, I can follow the coach mark so you can see how this works. You can create a new hue and saturation adjustment layer. So I'll do that, hue and saturation adjustment. And then it says drag the saturation slider to the left to about 65. All right, saturation to the left to about 65. We'll see what that gives us. There we go. Click the new adjustment layer icon and choose color lookup. I'll do that. And then this one says, open the 3D Lab menu near the top of the properties panel and choose night from day.cube. All right, I'll do that. There we go. And then in this one, I have to click next to continue. And then click on the new adjustment layer icon and choose levels. I'll do that. Under the gradient bar near the bottom of the panel are fields for output levels. If you cannot see them, position your cursor over the lower edge of the properties panel and drag down to reveal them. So you might have opened them and you can't really see them, so you need to drag down. Then click next to continue. Drag the lower right white slider for the output levels to the left to about 115 to darken the bright highlights. So to about 115. This one to about 115. Oops, actually no, this one right here to about 115. I don't know why I decided 115. It looks too dark now now that I'm looking at it again. Cool. Click on next. To make a realistic day to night transformation, you will need to replace the sky with a nighttime sky photo. Click on next to continue. Click on the background layer to make it active. Then I can go into select and sky, select sky. And with the skylight selected, I can click on the thumbnail of the night sky to make it active, enable it, and click on the layer mask icon to create a mask. Click next to continue, click next again, and we're done. So this is how those in-app tutorials work. I know that this is the first time that we've gone through an in-app tutorial, but I kind of did it without following the steps. I pretty much memorized the steps on all the streams that we've done, and I've added a lot more tips and tricks, but this is how it works. And when you're done, you can save it if you want. I'm going to save it into my Creative Cloud, and I'll open it again. Here it is. It's a cloud document. You can see the little cloud here in the panel, but this is our result. And this is actually something very important, that when you're compositing, a lot of times you have to think of little things that you can add to an image to make it more realistic. In this case, it became more realistic by adding a sky. And if we wanted to take it even a step further, I could maybe make a selection like so, add a layer mask to it, and then maybe invert it, Control-I on Windows, Command-I on the Mac, so that I now select the foreground. And maybe I can come in here and maybe, paint with, oops, I'm painting on the mask. I need to paint on the layer. Maybe paint with white to add some highlights. And I know that's too strong, but we'll fix that in a moment. Maybe something like this. And I'm going quickly here, obviously. Here's the new keyboard shortcut, by the way. When you paint, you can press the tilde key. That's the key underneath the escape key on the top left of the keyboard to erase with the same brush that you're using. That becomes beneficial when you are using, let me see, let me find a brush that we could use for this. Would this one work? Yeah, for this. That becomes beneficial if you're painting with a brush like this, because if you switch over into the eraser tool, you'll no longer have the same brush. So that doesn't look realistic. So if you want to make sure that you erase with the same brush that you're using to paint, press the tilde key, and then when you erase, it uses the same brush. And that's starting in Photoshop 2021, I want to say, and newer. Definitely not older than 2020. If you're in an older version, if you want to do the same thing, there's actually a trick for that. So if you're painting with an older version of Photoshop and you want to do the same thing, the keyboard shortcut won't work. But what you can do is, from the blending mode drop down here in the options bar, you can select clear, and when you paint, it gives you the same result. So the tilde key in newer versions of Photoshop is essentially doing that, but just with a keyboard shortcut. So I hope that helps. But anyway, back to the top of the Alvaro Bello buildings here. Has anyone in the chat been to Alvaro Bello in Italy? It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't been there already. But what I can do at this point now is change the blending mode to overlay. And now I have a nice little highlight there. And obviously, if it's too intense, I can bring it down. And that just helps create the illusion that the moonlight is hitting the building. Probably too much on this little rooftop here and this little Alvaro Bello home. Cool. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. Tilde doesn't work if you don't have a US keyboard. That's right, Robert. So the keyboards that I know off the top of my head are for North American keyboards. So I do apologize for those of you in other countries that are not using North American keyboards, because the shortcuts, for the most part, actually, I should say, there's a few shortcuts that don't work in keyboards that are not North American keyboards, but for the most part, most of the keyboard shortcuts should work. How do you spell the name in Italian? I don't know. Let me see. I know I know I can say it, but I don't know if I can spell it. Here we go. I'm gonna paste it in the chat, and I'll even show you guys the Google search I just did so that you can see what it is. It's that right there. Oops, it was I even got it wrong in the chat. I added an extra space, but this is what it looks like. And this, you go up into this place and you walk through these streets, and you can get some great shots of these cool homes in the south of Italy. I believe it's in the it's in Puglia for sure, in the Salento region, like in the like in, you know how Italy's shaped like a boot? It's like on the tip of the heel. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place. If you haven't already, you should definitely check it out. Cool. Let me see how much time we have in the chat. Yeah, there hasn't been many questions regarding the streams, the previous streams. So let me know if you have any questions at all with the previous streams, or even some of the stuff that we talked about today. Okay, it looks like Tim is leaving the chat. Goodbye, Tim. Cool. Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat. But can you use the shortcut for the clear blending mode? I have assigned 2 buttons on my programmable keyboard, clear. Yeah, if you can assign a keyboard shortcut to it, then yeah. I just don't know. I mean, I just don't know if you can assign a blending mode to one of these blending modes. I know that these blending modes here have keyboard shortcuts. I don't remember them all, to be frank with you, but I do have them on my website. If you go into my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, you'll see this section here called Blending Modes Explained. You click on that, and this is really long article about all the blending modes. And if you click on the blending mode keyboard shortcuts here, you'll see the shortcuts for the blending modes. But that's not for the blending modes on the brush tool. This is for the blending modes on the layers panel. So it might be a good idea to just memorize the ones that you use the most often. So for example, memorize multiply, screen, overlay, soft light, and that's probably all the ones I would memorize, to be honest with you. The other ones, I don't use this often, so I probably wouldn't memorize those keyboard shortcuts, and I haven't. But I mean, Alt Shift on Windows, Option Shift on the Mac, and then M for multiply, S for screen, O for overlay. Those will be like super easy to remember. And then F for soft light will be probably the more difficult one, but I wouldn't remember all of these. I don't have them all memorized. So yeah. Let me see, there's another question in the chat. How would I finish the white highlights you started? Yeah, I would change the blending mode, like I said, to overlay and see how intense that is. Maybe even reduce it. If I wanted to get fancy, I probably will, to be frank with you. I probably would get fancy. I would go into color dodge, double click to the side of the layer here, uncheck transparency shapes layer, and that creates more of a highlight, and just reduce the fill opacity and just keep it very subtle. So that's probably how I would do it. Just something like that, very, very subtle. And also, you know, talking about realism, what I would also do is there probably would be like a very faint shadow here, you know, kind of mimicking the building. And I'm going fast here, but, you know, we'll do something like this where we have a shadow, and I'm just gonna go here and I will fill that shadow. I'll probably would do it above the adjustment layers just so that I can control it better. Fill it with, oh, here's a trick for you. If you press the Q key, you'll enter the quick mask mode. And I already have this feather set to 5 because I was explaining this in probably yesterday's stream. I don't remember. But the point is that I don't really like to use the feather values. Instead, what I like to do is go into filter or press the Q key to enter the quick mask mode, then go into filter, blur, and select Gaussian blur. And the reason I like to do that is so that I can see how much I'm feathering the image or blurring the edges, and then press the Q key again, fill with black. Black is my background color, so control and backspace. And then with a brush, I can paint with black, to in the areas that shouldn't have the shadows, something like that. And then change the blending mode to like multiply and reduce the opacity way, way down, and just maybe something like that. And obviously adjust it accordingly. But yeah, it looks like we're out of time, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me this week. It was a pleasure being here with everybody at Adobe Live. I hope that you learned a lot. Make sure that you check out Discord so that you can submit your work. Hopefully I can be back again soon. If not, you can check me out at my YouTube channel, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, and on Adobe Max coming up in just a few months. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. I believe Paul Tranny is up next. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.